I've always been interested in cemeteries.
In Fort Fairfield, there's a name that comes up time and time again. Michael Russell.
Michael was a badass.
Dr. Kimberly Siebold is a professor of history at the University of Maine, Presque Isle. She says to understand the people who shaped Fort Fairfield, you have to look way back, before the border between the US and Canada was even settled.
It was a frontier.
It really was, but it was
was
wood,
frontier.
not a prairie.
Crystal Luttrell is a researcher and genealogist. She says in the early 1800s, Aroostook County looked very different.
And this was virgin forest, old growth trees that were probably double or triple the size they are now.
A forest full of valuable lumber for anyone willing to take it. That's where Michael Russell comes in.
He starts working for mills, people who are harvesting lumber up in this area.
Born in Ireland's County Tipperary, Michael joined the British Army, serving overseas. After what might best be described as a checkered service record, the Army disbanded his regiment in Canada. Nearly 2,000 miles from home, with a new wife and growing family to care for, Russell headed north for work.
They left him and the horses and the tools and everything up here at Fort Fairfield. He was there to kind of protect that.
He quickly saw how vital the Aroostook River was to the lumber trade.
When they could get into the forest and then cut, and then in the spring they would travel the logs down the rivers.
And anyone heading up or down river was forced to navigate Aroostook Falls.
Whoever controls the river wins.
Seizing the opportunity, Russell moved his family to the area around 1823 and built a home right by the falls. People passing through had to unload their boats, then carry everything overland before getting back on the river. According to family lore, Russell was there to help. For a price.
The running joke now is gangs of Aroostook. It really was like that.
Official documents from the time paint a colorful picture.
They've described Michael Russell and the Irishmen as being dangerous and not safe to go by his house.
But Russell's legacy doesn't end there.
That is the house I grew up in.
That's Richard Russell, Michael's great grandson.
It was a very warm, secure place.
His childhood home still stands on Russell Road, named for his family.
They were all descendants of Russells the whole way out to the end of that road.
While he's lived in New Brunswick for many years, Fort Fairfield is very much in his blood.
It gives me a warm feeling, and I like to think back to the way it was when I first remember it.
After delving into the family history, Richard has a pretty unvarnished view of his ancestor, Michael.
I get the feeling that he was a bit of a renegade.
A renegade who paved the way for other Irish immigrants.
And they stuck together, and they seem to have helped each other quite a bit.
Leaning on each other, those early settlers faced down harsh winters and forged a community in Aroostook County.
Determined. They had to be, otherwise they would not have survived.
Even today, you can still see the homes his descendants built along Russell Road. And as Fort Fairfield grew, so did Michael Russell's standing. Church records show Michael and his eldest son John frequently sponsored baptisms and marriages in the region.
I think it really speaks on the type of esteem they had within that community that was emerging.
The town of Fort Fairfield was incorporated in 1858. Just 8 years later, Michael Russell died. But even today, the enduring legacy of this Irish immigrant is plain to see.
Had it not been for Michael Russell, there might not be a Fort Fairfield today.
Stephen Armstrong, News Centre, Maine.